Shalom Aleichem to everybody and welcome. Chazde Hashem, a wonderful opportunity to share in many different mediums, and Chazde Hashem, we can share here, and hopefully we'll see where this goes.
Amazing, yeah, thank you very much. Everyone that is able to tune in live. Okay, there you go, live from work. We're calling this new series, it's really been something we've been wanting to put out for quite a while, Chizik at work. And Ashreichem Yisrael, Ashreichem Yisrael, if you're tuning into this live, if you're listening to this while you're sitting at your desk, whether it's 12 o'clock, whether it's 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, on your way to work, back from work, Chizik at work is something which is so important. Here on Work Inspired, for those that are familiar with this amazing project that we've had the chus to have many conversations with Jewish people that are out in the workforce over a number of years, inspiring people while they're working, about their work, about their parnasa is our mission. And really it's been a wanting of ours, as much as possible, to be able to help Yidden that are out there in the workplace, men, women. We understand that this whole sugya of parnasa, whether it be work and money, is something which it seems to be, for most people, takes up a lot of our time. And the question is it just something that we krechs about, something that we get through, or is it something which inspires us? Is it something which empowers us? And it's our wanting that through these conversations, Chizik at work, that we'll be able to share some ideas. Just before we jump into our first question, right? These sessions of Chizik at work are going to be live Q&As. So for those of you that are able to tune in live, either for those in Eretz Yisrael while it's your work, or those diehard fans in America, they're going to wake up in the middle of the night to be able to join live. And once again, I think there are Jews in England also. Yes, there seem to be Jews in England and South America, South Africa, many different countries with different time zones. It's an opportunity to bring questions to the forefront. But even for those that aren't able to show up live, or they're in the middle of painting while they're listening and not able to ask a question, perhaps, live. What we want to share are questions that have been coming through to us over the last couple of years in a very special format. The Chabura, maybe sometimes we refer to it as being this laboratory of bringing together Jewish professionals, B'nai Torah, B'nai Aliyah, who are interested in not just getting Chizuk, but really excavating different topics of the Torah around money, around parnasa, around work. And through these conversations and through these learning sessions that we've had together, there have been really amazing questions that have come, real life questions that people are hitting in the workplace, in their finances, in their relationships. And what we've seen is that these are not just questions of individuals, these are really questions that are in so many people's minds. So within this format of Chizik at work, we're going to bring up different questions that have been asked, that have been discussed, share some ideas, and make sure that we could wrap up within this 20-minute slot with some practical walkaways so that you're able to take that you hear and start working with it right away. Sounds good?
I'm excited.
Okay, anything else to share about the Chabura, about your vision, Rav Gerzi, for this Chizik at work?
Maybe just a reminder, share the bigger picture about the Arba Yisodis for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Just share about the Arba Yisodis. So we have, I say we because there's Baruch Hashem a team, but over the last 25 years, looking out at the world, one thing that's really important to me is to see what's missing. Throughout the generations, throughout our history, from generation to generation, and I've got so many writings on this, I've got one particular text dedicated to this. How do we know what to do in each dor? So for example, if we're looking at the times of my Rebbe, the Biala Rebbe, his father, Zichron Livracha, the Chelkes Yeshua, his generation, he says, until Moshiach comes, Achtus and Avos Yisrael. And we need, that's like the avodah of the door. How do we get there is a whole question. We try to deal with that as well. If you go a bit further back, for example, you've got the Noam Elimelech, who his Parshas Noach, in his generation, it was to mutaken the mitzvah of tzitzis, whatever that means. the Slonim Rebbe, I was able to sit with the Heilige Slonim Rebbe, the Nesiva Shalom, Zichron Livracha, and he would say how every generation has its Avodah, every generation has its Tikkun. And over the last 20 years, sitting with Talmidei Chachamim, Gedolei Torah, Tzadikim, to observe what's missing and to try and fill that up is a must within the Jewish world. It's a must. And in conjunction with certain tzaddikim, we've got, Baruch Hashem, a very integrated system of what we don't necessarily learn in schools, in yeshivas, and we're trying to educate people. Why? The output, the outcome is to live a good life. We all deserve it. It's to live a good life. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us here to live a good life, really, without any suffix whatsoever. And it's not so difficult. There are maybe under 15 areas, and we spoke about this in one of the chaburas last night. We have a whole journaling avodah called, what's it called?
Sefer HaChaim.
Sefer HaChaim, thank you. Sefer HaChaim. And it's about 15 different areas in life. It's actually less than that. But if we place our attention on it, we live better. And part of that is including what we call the Arbi Yisaitis. And what are the Arbi Yisaitis? Just homing into that. Arbi Yisaitis are these fundamental areas that we should pay attention to. Physical and financial health is number one, which is what's called the Malchus. It's called the Malchus. It's the lowest, the last hay. Then you've got relationships. You need to place attention and place energy upon your relationships. Then you've got the mind, how the mind works, memory, and studying and being creative, chokhmah, using your mind. And then you've got guidance and spirituality. So it breaks down. The yud is guidance and spirituality. The first hay is the mind, wisdom, chokhmah. The vav is relationships. And then the last hay, the malchus, is physical and financial health. And then each of these principles have their own fundamentals. If we're speaking about physical health, the fundamentals that we need to care for of physical health is what? It's breathing, hydration, sleeping, eating, and exercise, movement. And then each of those have their own principles. So it's a lot. So the way we break this down in order to give it over is through chaburas. And we have to have, because we have so much information, a chabura dedicated to a particular topic. So, for example, what's Pilzno Work Inspired? Pilzno Work Inspired is the financial health of the Arbi Yisaitis. And within this world of financial health, we discuss, for example, the fundamentals of Work Inspired is to do with financial, first of all, it's to do with our attitude towards Gashmis and money. That's number one, our attitude towards Gashmis and money. It's to do with our education in what money is and how to use it. We speak about, for example, what a job is, how a job works. And we speak about, for example, what a career is. What is a career? And for example, as well, saving, investments. Now, in the world that we live in, it could be, no one has ever guided us, the Torah, Tanakh, Mishnah, Shas, Paiskim, Shalos Utshuvas, Chassidus, Avodah, Nigla, Nista is so rich with really uplifting this world. There's so much advice, there's so much real integrated understanding in all of these different areas to do with finance. And what we do is really work within this world of the Chabura. We have a 2-year, it works out to be a 2-year, a 2-year
program.
And Chazda Hashem, it's good stuff. So,
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Gerzi, for the introduction. And for those that are new to Work Inspired, I think just the importance, in general, each week when we get together, on Wednesdays, we'll jump directly into questions. But I think understanding the background, just you can appreciate that what's being shared here, while it might just sound like just practical advice and a little bit of a discussion between two rabbis, a business coach, a career coach, and may sound interesting, just to appreciate that it's really it's the top of a tower that's really been built, and the schus that I've had to be part of it, and the B'nai Chabur that have been part of it, and really investing into this conversation. So for today, beyond the introduction, the question that we wanted to bring up, that's really been coming up over the last couple of weeks in the Chabura, and it's really something that's on a lot of people's minds that are living in Eretz Yisrael, and I think that even people outside of Eretz Yisrael that are connected to the Jewish people, right, is this question of how am I able to transition, and how am I able to really get back to the way things were before we had this war that for many, I'd say for myself, and I think for most people, unless you had a tip-off from intelligence or a tzaddik, it just came. There was this war that happened, and it was a very big turmoil, on different levels. Each person, depending on where they lived and their particular family situation and their physical location and how things were, each person had a different experience. And what we saw was that it created a very big upheaval. Baruch Hashem, Nisim B'Neflois, what we saw, and that period ended, per se, some time ago. Yet a question that's come up from people in B'nai Chabura is, even though it's ended, I'm still feeling these reverberations and struggling being able to just jump back into my regular busy schedule of work, of life, of family, of learning, and the way things were before. So the question is this just me? And what could be done about it?
That's my cue.
Yeah, that's a cue, and we have some ideas because we have to wrap up in a few minutes. Let's
hear some thoughts from within. So we've been sharing within our Chabur at the moment this whole nakud of change and transitioning. And what is change and transitioning? So change is very natural. Change happens. Change is something that's put upon us, and in a very real way, we're like little sheep. We follow. Change is natural. Change happens, and we follow. COVID, we had it, and throughout the last number of months we had it, and throughout the last week we have had it. So there's change. There was a war, then there's no war. And then what is transitioning? Transitioning is our internal world. Transitioning is our way of thinking, our feelings, our physical sensations. Transitioning typically, unless one is trained to be more connected to their body and embodied, transitioning lags behind change. So what that looks like is that I may know cerebrally the war is over. However, how many times could it be, and maybe you've noticed this in your life, but how many times could it be, whether in Eretz Yisrael or it could be even in America, how many times, especially in Eretz Yisrael, the phone goes, and it could be an alarm for a siren, or there's a door closing and it's a boom. If, for example, there's I don't know what it is, Erev Shabbos, the Shabbos siren, and you think maybe it's a siren for whatever it may be. A couple of months ago, I told over the story, a couple of months ago, one of the sirens went, and there was a kid in the street. There was a kid in the street who stood upright like that. And everyone's running around, and this kid is standing up upright. Why? What did this kid think? Well, in Eretz Yisrael, there's as well, Yom HaTzmaut siren, Yom Yerushalayim siren, and they thought it was a siren to stand up straight. So it's very confusing, and there's this change and transitioning, and the way we work is we create our perception through association and selection. We select and associate, and that becomes our perception, that becomes our memories, that becomes what something means to us. And for sure, especially in Eretz Yisrael, but even people listening to the news in America, the change and transitioning, as we said, change is natural. The internal world needs to catch up. Another way of describing this is there's layers of trauma. There's simple trauma and complex trauma. And unfortunately, as a nation here in Eretz Yisrael, the complex traumas and the layers of trauma is really, it's not pashut. So what is trauma? Trauma is really our embodied physical and emotional and our thoughts, the embodiment of that which is going on and where we are in context to it. So for example, when I hear the door shut, and bang, I think my body jumps as a boom. So what is that? So there are layers of trauma. And there's soft trauma, hard trauma. So it's a very, very big conversation. It's a very, very, very big conversation. And the nakuda is, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? And the reality is that we could do a lot about it. And that's where this whole nakuda of change and transition comes in. If I know my body and my thinking and my thoughts have to catch up, I can do something about it. And what's one answer that we can do about it? One simple answer that sounds maybe really simple, but it's just breathing. Breathing, stopping, just placing your breath, placing your attention on your breath and just breathing, and just allowing your inner world to catch up with your mind, become a little bit present and focused. And the more that we can become a little bit present and focused in the moment, that's the beginning, at least, of another conversation. That's the beginning of how we can come and really tackle the change and transitioning. And maybe just to pick up on one other point, is that so many people, no school, no work, and we're expected to go back to work. And this nakuda of work I've shared with a lot of people, just to come to their desk at work and just to stop, place their attention on their breath. I'm here now, I'm about to work, and I'm going to hopefully become engaged. And Hashem, please help me become engaged, help me be present, and help me transition. Let my inner world catch up to the change that's occurring in the world, and be present and engage. That's something that comes up now.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much. And really, there's more to share about the topic, and we'll see. B'ezras Hashem, what we speak about next week. Stay tuned. But I think that it's such an important principle for us to keep in mind. Something we've spoken about in the Chabura, about this topic we've been going through over the last number of months about work-life balance. As each one of us are trying to manage different roles, and whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's our learning, and what is a fair expectation for us, right? Especially if you're living a life where you have many different roles and trying to get a lot of things done. So one of the secrets that we've been speaking about is that from the Torah's perspective, the Torah understands that there's more of what we called a work-life rhythm, in which we recognize that there are different periods of time that require focus. And therefore, it's okay if during a specific time, specific week, a specific month, right now I need to focus more on my job, and right now I need to focus more on my family, certain things may have less of a focus. And I think that how this connects very much to what we've been sharing here, really just we want you to walk away feeling a sense of chizuk, right? If this is something that you're feeling that your productivity is dropped, right, is that we've gone through a certain period of time. And if you felt during that time, wow, like I'm not on top of everything as much as I've wanted to, that's okay. Because that concept of work-life rhythm is that we're not always going to be on top of something.
Just to validate that.
To recognize that's okay. Right now my focus needs to be self-care. Right now my focus needs to be being there for my spouse, being there for my children. And if that's still something that you're feeling right now, what we've heard here today is that the concept of transition is just because there was a change, just because the war ended, doesn't necessarily mean, right, that everything is just shifted. And if that's something that you're still feeling, if you realize I may need to give that time to myself, give that time to my spouse, and if it will take me another week for me to be able to close that up internally for me, for my family, so do that. And don't feel like, wow, I'm not getting things done, because Hashem wants us to focus on those things that are priorities in that time. With the tool that we just learned here today, I think something you can start plugging in right away, right, is to recognize by taking that moment, right, to be able to have an internal transition, beautiful tefillah, becoming present, right, is able to step into a space and try to be able to increase our focus, even if there are other things on the outside that could be distracting us. So thank you very much for tuning in. We look forward, B'ezras Hashem, to seeing you next Wednesday at Chizuk at work.
Bracha v'atzlacha.